There's two types of potatoes, starchy and waxy. For mashed potatoes, you want a starchy potato. A potato with higher starch and low moisture will yield a fluffier inside. We're using Yukon Gold potatoes. They're actually somewhere in between a starchy and a waxy potato. They're harder to overmash and have a foolproof, creamy texture. We're gonna peel the potatoes before boiling. Some people like to leave the skin on their mashed potatoes, which creates a little bit more texture, but for really creamy, silky smooth mashed potatoes with a uniform texture, it's gonna work a lot better with the skin off. Quick tip. To keep your potatoes from discoloring and oxidizing as they sit out, place them in a bowl of cold water while you work. After you've peeled your potatoes, cut them into 1-inch cubes. This way they're gonna cook more quickly and evenly. Add your potatoes to a pot of cold water and add a very generous pinch of salt. This is gonna help build the layers of flavor as the potatoes cook, which means you'll need less salt down the line. Now we're gonna bring the potatoes to a soft boil over high heat. Once you've reached a soft boil, reduce the heat to low and simmer for about 12 minutes. You'll know your potatoes are ready for mashing when they're fork tender. Go ahead and remove the pot from the heat and drain the potatoes through a colander. At this point, you're actually going to place the potatoes back in the pot over medium-high heat and stir them around for 2 to 3 minutes. That's just going to release any excess moisture. At the end of this, the potatoes should be super dry. When it comes to mashed potatoes, most people use a potato masher or even a fork. Some people use a potato ricer for a more uniform texture, which we're also really big fans of. If you don't have any of those tools and want to get a similar result, you can use a fine mesh sieve. Place the boiled potatoes in the sieve and use a spatula to gently push them down. I'm not gonna lie, this definitely takes more muscle and is more time consuming, but the potatoes are gonna be so silky smooth and beautiful, it's really worth the effort. Whatever you do, do not use a food processor or a hand mixer. This is gonna overwork the potatoes, creating a gummy-like paste. And let's be real, no one wants that. Now, it wouldn't be mashed potatoes without adding some butter. You wanna use unsalted butter because it allows you to control the amount of salt in your mashed potatoes. We made so many variations of mashed potatoes and taste tested all of them. We tried cold butter, milk, melted butter, sour cream, cream cheese, heavy cream. And after all that, we decided to stick with melted butter and heavy cream. While some people do like sour cream and cream cheese, we found that the flavor really stood out and took away from that uniform consistency and texture that we were looking for. Quick tip, you always want to add your butter before adding any cream or milk. This is going to ensure that the texture of the potato remains firm before being softened by all that cream. If you add your butter and your cream all at once, it's going to create this really soupy texture, whereas if you go gradually, it'll be nice and smooth and creamy. So remember how we talked about building flavors? This is another time where you're going to season it with salt. Add your heavy cream to a small saucepan over medium-high heat. This is also the moment when you can enhance the flavor of your mashed potatoes. We're gonna add some rosemary sprigs and garlic, but you can get creative with other herbs and ingredients as well. Bring the heavy cream mixture to a simmer. Once it's simmering for a few minutes and that cream is getting really infused with flavor, you're gonna strain out the garlic and the rosemary through a sieve, and then add just the cream to the potatoes little by little until they're fully incorporated. Remember, if you add all the heavy cream at once, it's just gonna become a soupy mess. As you fold the heavy cream into the mashed potatoes, you're gonna see this really smooth texture start to come together. I mean, it's so beautiful. It's that easy. Your potatoes are finally ready to serve. So, because it's tasty, we're gonna top it with more butter. We're also gonna add some freshly ground black pepper, some chives. You can really experiment with your toppings, but this is a pretty classic preparation.
Even though we're going to be breaking it down into its pieces, we still want to be cognizant of how big our bird is. So typically they say about a pound per person. The FDA no longer recommends washing your bird because it can spread and contaminate the rest of your kitchen. So we're just going to take it out of the packaging, pat it down with paper towels, and get moving. And your first time breaking down a bird, a lot of this is just making these exploratory cuts so you can see what you're doing. So just be slow, take your time. Shouldn't be a ton of cutting through bone. We're gonna take out the neck and the innards. We're also gonna super quickly cut off the wingtips. Those would just char roasting with the rest of the stuff, so we're gonna use those for our stock. And we're gonna turn our bird over. First thing we wanna do is release the oysters. And the oysters are this really great chunk of meat on the back of the bird, and they are attached to the thighs. Here are our wings. Those are our oysters and our legs and thighs. So we're gonna do a cut down the backbone. just to release the skin and make a little cross. You can kind of feel them right here and just cut above them. You're just gonna use the tip of your knife and kind of scrape around and release that oyster. It's kind of like a half circle, if you will. And if you leave some meat on the bone, that's totally fine. You just wanna get as much as you can. And once you get it released to this point, you're gonna turn the turkey over. Now we're going to release the legs. Here are our wings up here and our breast. First off, you're just gonna release the skin with your knife. Just one smooth motion, and that's just so that we can see what we're doing now. So you're gonna use your fingers, being careful always to keep your fingers away from your knife. We're going to first start by releasing some of the meat from the bottom of the carcass, right where my hand is. At this point, we're just gonna pop out the joint. So it's kind of crazy. You kind of like put your hand underneath the thigh. With your other hand, move the rest of the carcass off to one side. Use your fingers to pop the joint out. You'll feel some pressure, and then all of a sudden it'll pop. Once we release the thighs and the legs, we're just gonna leave them here. They're just acting as a stabilizer, and we're gonna move up to the breast and remove that. So with the breastbone, we're just gonna cut down the middle, again, a little exploratory cut. Then you can use your fingertips to feel where the edge of the breastbone is, and just do nice, long, smooth cuts. I like to kind of release the smaller, thinner part of the breast and kind of fold it up as I go and fold it to the side so I can really see where I'm going and scrape down the breastbone as best as I can to release all the meat. Just work slow and steady. Your main goal is to get as much meat off as you can. You can see there's some tendons up here near the shoulder, and we're just looking for that shoulder joint. We're going to use the tip of my knife and scrape off any meat so that I can see a little bit better, cut through any tendons. And then the nice thing about the shoulder joint is it's quite large. Once you get to that point, you can kind of see right where it is and use the tip of your knife to expose it. If you're hitting the right place, it shouldn't be hard on your knife. And now we have our breast and our wing removed. We're gonna put that off to the side so we can get the next breast off. So do the same thing. We're just gonna go on the other side of the breastbone and release the rest of the breast as we go. And voila. So we started removing the legs and the thighs, but now we're gonna finish that process. I'm just gonna kind of pull the carcass away from the thigh and just start releasing the tendons and the skin and the meat away from the carcass. The one thing that we want to be aware of here is we want to take that oyster with us. Here's the thigh, here's the leg, and then the oyster's in that top right. Same deal with the other one. So kind of pull the carcass away, release the meat and skin where you can, taking that oyster with you, and we're off. So I'm gonna use the carcass now. I'm gonna take the tips with me as well, and the turkey neck. And we're gonna roast those off with some vegetables and make a really good stock. Do not throw this stuff away. Please make the stock. It's gonna make your gravy taste insane. I'm just gonna clean down a little bit. I'm gonna fresh board, clean off my knife, get some fresh gloves, always working with a clean environment, and always being really organized. So we got these big regions off the bird, but now we're gonna break these off into their grocery pieces, if you will. So we have the thigh and then the leg. We wanna separate those two. So the easiest way is to turn them over because you don't have that skin inhibiting where you can see. You have this fat line in between, and it's kind of this weird natural line that's telling you where to cut, which is great. So we're gonna cut right along that fat line to expose the skin. Again, we're always looking for the joint. You can find the joint and you can use the little tip of your knife to kind of separate a little bit and then just cut right through it. Again, if this is really hard, then you're probably in the wrong place. So just kind of move your knife around a few times until you get a really nice smooth cut. All right, so here is our breast and our wing. The nice thing about this too is that now you know where all the bones are, so it's gonna make it much easier when you're carving later. If you've ever carved a whole bird and you're just guessing your way through it, this is gonna make it so much easier later on when you're portioning out the different pieces. Because of the way that we cut off the breast, it's basically boneless, so all we really need to do is cut off the shoulder bit. So don't overthink this. You can cut a good amount of the breast meat off and have it go with the wing because it's like a little bit of an extra treat for whoever gets the wing part, as well as it just makes your life easier. One thing that we want to be aware of too is that all the pieces are relatively close in size. We'll follow that up with the other breast and the other thigh. And then we are good to go. So we're gonna clean down real quickly. Again, I just wanna make sure that I'm being as clean as possible. Really hot soapy water. Get all the bits, really do a good job, and then follow up with a spray sanitizer or antibacterial spray. So into our brine. So a brine really just consists of salt and sugar. I'm not a big believer in a wet brine, dry brine for life. Salt and sugar are desiccants and they are going to draw out moisture, but once they draw out that moisture, it then re-seeps back into the meat. So you get a really flavorful, really juicy meat when it's all said and done. So I'm gonna start with salt, brown sugar, so it's gonna give us a little bit of a molassy flavor. Molassesy, I was corrected, molassesy flavor. Ugh, fine. It gives us a little molasses flavor. And then I'm gonna use some cracked black pepper. Look at this. This is freshly cracked, nice big chunks, not any of that like weird powder stuff that comes pre-done. So much more aromatic and flavorful. And I'm gonna use a little bit of garlic granule. So this is kind of in between a powder and the dried like chips that you can get. The nice thing about the garlic granules is that they have a ton of flavor, but they incorporate really, really well. So stir those all together. Something about a spice mix, isn't it pretty? Put that off to the side, and we're gonna bring back our turkey. The cool thing about breaking the turkey down in its pieces is that we're really able to season all sides of the meat, which is another great reason to be breaking your meat down ahead of time. So some birds will have a few feathers left in. Don't freak out, just pull them out. If you have tweezers, that can be helpful, but they should be pretty big. So if you don't get all of them, it's fine. They'll kind of burn off when roasting, but if there's any huge ones, you wanna get those out. And then we're gonna season all sides of the bird. Just make sure I'm kind of patting it down, getting all sides and all the skin really well coated in the brine. We're doing this a day ahead. So we are going to actually leave these in the fridge uncovered overnight. That's going to really draw the moisture out of the skin. So we're gonna have super, super crispy, great skin when it's all said and done. For making the stock, because we want to do the gravy, we want to mimic those great roasty, toasty dripping bits that you would get from roasting your turkey. So I'm going to throw the turkey carcass, the wingtips, and the neck on a baking sheet. I'm going to put on celery, onions, I'm going to quarter those, leave the skin on, and then also some carrots as well. Lightly season everything. Because all these flavors will be concentrated, I don't want to oversalt this. And a little bit of oil, again, for lubrication. Throw that in a super hot oven for about 30 minutes or so, just to get a little bit of that Maillard reaction from all the meat, as well as caramelize the sugar in the vegetables. And then I'm gonna take everything that was on this tray and put it into a big pot, cover it with water. So I'm gonna pour off all the extra fat, and then I'm gonna put some water on this hot baking tray and scrape all of those brown bits. Look at all of the flavor that's on here. That's all that onion sugar, the drippings from the carcass. You're basically like deglazing the baking tray. So I have the fat in one and the liquids in the other. These drippings will be saved for the gravy. So with the carcass, I'm gonna cover this up with water all the way and then simmer this guy for about 2.5, 3 hours or so. And that's gonna give you the most delicious stock you've ever tasted. It's gonna be amazing. So when you're making a gravy, the first step is making a roux. And a roux is equal parts flour and fat. So we're gonna use our fat drippings from roasting the carcass, and then we're gonna add equal parts flour. And we're gonna just toast this off for a little bit. So we wanna cook the flour a little bit before we add too much liquid. And that's to do two things. One, it's gonna help beat out any lumps, and two, it's going to help cook out the flour flavor. And we're going to gradually add liquid to this, because if you add too much liquid at once, it's going to be really, really hard to beat out those lumps. Just the best way to ensure that you're gonna have a really smooth gravy in the end. So I'm gonna take my time here, adding a little bit of liquid as we go. You do have to babysit it quite a bit. And again, we're gonna use all of the drippings from when we were deglazing the pan earlier. So I'm gonna use a strainer just to be extra safe, because there were, some of the onion and other skin and stuff remaining on the pan from the drippings. Add the rest of that in. All of the fat and all of the drippings are incorporated, but it's still pretty thick. Flour will start to thicken once it gets to a boil. So that's why you want to keep the heat pretty high, because if you're on too low of a heat all of this time, you'll be afraid to add too much liquid because it won't thicken up. Now we're going to use the stock that we made to finish off this gravy and thin it out a little bit. You could also use water, which is going to really not be a ton of flavor. You could use store-bought if you've decided not to make the stock, but trust me, the stock that we made earlier is going to make a big, big difference. So once you get to a good place and you feel like it's a good thinness, while we used a little bit of salt just to kind of enhance the flavor of the meat and the vegetables before, we haven't seasoned it at all. So you want to make sure that you taste it, and you're going to have to add a significant amount of seasoning right now because, again, we haven't really added much seasoning up until this point. And again, just keep tasting and seasoning until it's just right. All right, so I'm happy with this. We're going to put it off to the side to cool, and then that's done. So all you need to do on the day of is just reheat that in a pan, and it's done. We're gonna preheat our oven to 425. Just go ahead and put a little bit of oil on it, and that will help with even browning. And we're gonna leave it in there for about 30 minutes. And that's gonna get us instant heat, instant color, and really dry out that skin right away. And then once it's been in for about 30 minutes, we're gonna lower it down to 400. Switch the positions of the pans and rotate them as well. Just if you have any hot spots in your oven, this will just help with that. And then continue roasting until the instant read thermometer inserted into the thickest part of the breast registers 160. So this is about like 30 minutes. And for the thighs, we want to take it out around 170. So if any pieces are already done and others need a little bit more time, you can just pull those out ahead of time so they don't overcook. Once our turkey's done, take it out of the oven, cover it with foil, let it sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. Because these are smaller pieces, they don't need to rest as long as a whole bird because they'll cool down a lot faster. And then we'll carve them. So now that our meat has cooled a little bit, it's a little bit easier to handle, we're gonna carve it for the table. The thigh, again, it's easier to see on the other side. You can see where that bone is, and we're just gonna cut off the meat in large chunks. Again, just cutting off the bone as best you can, cut off the top, like all that meat around the bone. It's the less pretty stuff, but it's still delicious, so we're gonna put that on the bottom of the platter. And the way that I'm cutting this is I'm making sure that every bite has a little bit of skin. Next up, we're gonna separate the wing. And the easiest way to do this is just put it on its side, cut down the middle, and then you can even just kind of like tear it apart. You can see you expose that joint, cut through it, and good to go. And then all of that meat that we put on there, all that white meat from the breast is on there as well, so that's a good piece. The leg, it's perfect as is, just put it on the platter. And then another thigh, same deal. Look how juicy it is, it's amazing. Then for the breast, again, I'm gonna cut down the skin on a diagonal and making sure that everyone's getting a little bit of skin. Because you have done all of these pieces, you can take your time making all these cuts really nice and making your platter really great because you haven't had to completely carve out an entire bird, so it should be a lot easier and you have a little bit more time for that presentation. So I like to put the dark meat on the side. Again, all of those smaller cuts that were a little bit uglier go on the bottom. And then you just lay those nice breast pieces on top, the really impressive cuts. And then I like to just spruce it up with a little bit of green. This is how it would come to the table normally. People don't even know that you didn't cook it on the carcass. If you want to tell people that you did, that's fine, but I think we should evangelize this method. We made gravy from it, we made stock from the whole thing. So you learned how to break down a bird as well. It's so much cheaper to be buying whole chickens, whole turkeys, whole ducks, you name it. And now that you know how to break it down, it's the same method for all birds. I just can't understand why you wouldn't do it this way, honestly, going forward. This is the only way I'm doing my turkey from now on. Sometimes traditions just need to be upgraded, you know, and like updated. Enjoy! Have a great holiday season, guys.
My aunt is the only person in our family that still bakes sweets. She's the only person that's kind of carried this recipe over from my grandmother and just kind of passed down those southern roots. So the way that you will know your potatoes are done, you just kind of give it a little poke or a little stab. That's how you know that it's ready. I grew up in Atlanta and my parents are from this town in Alabama called Monroeville. So Thanksgiving, Christmas, like whatever holiday you can think of, we would drive down. Or my grandma, I remember like she would just always have all this food and she didn't have a lot of money and all that, but you could guarantee that there was going to be a spread. Everything that you ever wanted, she knew all your favorites, and that was her way of showing love. And I feel like that is what Southern cooking is all about. It's just a way to show love and give back to your family in a different kind of way. I'll say this, I'm always looking forward to this pie for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I might even volunteer to make the sweet potato pie this year. Nobody's probably gonna let me do it though. Or they'll let me do like one and then she'll do all the other ones. Anybody makes anything good, like if you know something's really good at Thanksgiving, it just goes. So if you don't get to that pie before it's gone, forget about it. Yeah, you better get it when you can. And people, I mean, we do share, it's very much about community, but people like what they like. We all know each other's favorites, so yeah, once it's gone, that's it. This is just one of my all-time favorites. It's the thing I can eat. I mean, I can eat a whole pie by myself. So my aunt surprised me by letting me know that she uses lemon extract in the sweet potato pie. When she said it, I was like, is she making a mistake? But it's been perfect for years, so I'm sure she knows what she's talking about. Here's the thing, I don't think anyone can cook sweet potato pie like anybody in my family. Nobody does it quite like we do. But hey, to all the aunties and grandmas and people out there, like, you guys are amazing, and I just think we're all partial to our family's cooking. Thanksgiving for us is just like the best time of the year. Probably my favorite holiday, just because it's so much about family and food and eating and just having a good time. It tastes so good. My aunt's gonna be super proud.
Oh, yes.